Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you. It is a great pleasure to have you join us for this special session on integrated business solution organized by Board of Studies Academic. The integrated approach advocated in core paper 6 at CA final level have emphasis on the importance of considering interrelated issues spanning finance, accounting standards, assurance, taxation, company law, and SEBI compliances, alongside strategic decision making. The Board of Studies is developing a series of new case studies that span multiple sectors and industries. These case studies are being crafted to present complex real world business scenarios where you must analyze and solve problems across disciplines such as finance, taxation, compliance, strategic aspects, and corporate governance. Each case study integrates strategic framework. Moreover, these IBS case studies require students to approach problems from the perspective of senior business roles such as CEO, CFO, finance director, internal auditor, or statutory auditor. Your guide for today's session is CA TV Bala Subramanian. I would like to invite CA TV Bala Subramanian sir. He is an experienced management consultant specialized in project feasibility studies, business planning and restructuring, mergers and acquisition, internal audits, fraud investigation, BFSI business consulting. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, G. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. I will share my screen and then we can get on to it. Yeah, hope the screen is also available. Before I get into the specific case study, I thought I'll just also talk a little briefly about this because some of the students have also already asked these questions of how complex are these IBS, how to prepare for it, etc. See, what's happening is as a chartered accountant, we are really covering a wide spectrum of regulatory requirements and also various other financial tools and cost tools under our various subjects, which we are covering in this process. What really happens in a real world scenario is that many times you have to consider the interplay of these. That is where the expertise comes in. That's where the real niche requirements are today. And having that readily there, especially in a scenario where these regulatory requirements have become very vast and deep, is very critical. So I'm going to talk about some of these case studies. Some are case studies based on what some companies have done. Some are case studies where I have also been involved. So whatever you're going to be seeing in the case studies in this session and the next session are cases which have been actually taken up and done with all the complexities or some of the complexities which you see. There are many, many more in each of these and much more. So this is exactly what would give you an idea of what to anticipate in the real world. So the whole idea of the IBS, as I see it as an individual from looking from outside, is to prepare our chartered accountants fresh with knowledge and also the ready tool to be able to put these together in an interplay to look at it from a holistic fashion from a CXO perspective rather than look at it from an accountant's perspective. I think that's where this whole thing is focused as I see it from an outside, as an outside person. So with that brief, let me then take you through today's session. I'm going to cover probably two case studies today. And at the end of it, there will be ample time for your questions. I think there is a mechanism to post your questions. You can post it there. I will take up the questions at the end, post which there will also be from BOS some explanations on queries relating to the exam, how the exam will be, what kind of papers, etc. That part will also be addressed. So this is going to be the overall structure for today's program. Please feel free to put in your queries as and when you have in the question answer section. I will reply to them at the end of it. Like I said, we will set up a certain time specifically and exclusively for that. I have a bad throat. I'm going to be continuously sipping something. It's that part of the year when things don't work the way it was expected to. So let's go ahead, and looking forward to a lot of participation. There are some questions and MCQs in the case study. So at that point of time, I hope there is an opportunity to unmute, or I would request you put in the chat box your answers, so we can discuss that also before we move on to the next case study. Then any specific questions which you have, I will address, like I said, at the end. But there are going to be some FAQs from here. We are going to be asking some questions also on each of these case studies, right? So let's go ahead. The first case study which we are going to see is about this company called Symphony Limited. Symphony Limited, I don't know how many of you know, it's an air cooler company. It's still there. It's a listed company. It is running now, etc., etc. I think it's listed. I don't follow much on the market. But at one point of time, it went into a very, very serious crisis. So how did they turn around? What did they do? And what led them to the problem, and how did they act? What were the challenges they faced, and what steps they took comprehensively is what we are going to be looking at in this case study. A real life case study, how a company has actually progressed in a particular scenario and how they have taken it forward. To just start with, let me give you an introduction of the company. The company was founded in 1988. So today it is quite a few years old, right? And it initially pioneered in the air cooler industry. What did they bring? They brought out innovative and stylish products. Now, most of you are much younger, probably 1988, you were not even born, so you might not have seen this change coming. Air coolers used to look like a big chunk of machinery sitting in your house. Prior to Symphony, air coolers used to look like a big machinery sitting in your factory machinery sitting in your house. So that's how it used to look. And you will be able to see the coir linings given inside. You will be able to see the fan. So many things you will be able to look at, and it really did not look like a nice equipment or household equipment. It looked more like a factory machinery. This is how it was looking. So Symphony came with ideas to make it elegant, look more like a air conditioner from the outside, and they also brought in along with that a lot of innovation into it. How they could change some of the things with different things so that it becomes a sleeker, smaller, and it used to be huge. The equipments used to be huge earlier. So they made it much smaller. They made it much more lively that way with this process. Their focus was to bring in affordable, energy efficient cooling solutions using user friendly design. So the most important thing was not only to make it affordable and energy efficient so that more people use it at home, because India is a hot country. India requires some cooling, and air conditioners are very costly to run. So, where they could do with the air cooler, it was a significant benefit to the populace to use it. So, there was a huge market available for that. So, in that, it was important that they make it with user friendly designs. And in the process, they brought in advanced technology into it so that they were working with things which could give much better efficiency and results. They achieved rapid early success and they had a very strong market share and product expansion driven by quality and strategic branding. So Symphony was like Band-Aid. Whatever plaster you get, it was Band-Aid. So like that, Symphony became the name for air cooler at that point of time. So this is the kind of niche they had created for themselves, and they had a significant market share in India. But what happened in the 1990s, right? Late 1990s, nearly about a decade after they started and they grew, this bug, which catches all the promoters, it caught them also. How to grow even bigger and bigger and bigger. So they decided to diversify into many other household appliances. So they said, we are doing air cooler. Air cooler is what? It's a household appliance. So let's try and do some more household appliances. So they said, okay, let's do heaters, let's do washing machines, etc. And when they went into all this, actually what happens when you do too much of expansion at a time when you are not ready for it, it creates a lot of pull on your resources. So maybe that was what was happening. There was a lot of pull on its resources, etc. The company went into financial distress. You were investing into innovations or product development, etc., into various things. You were also investing into marketing for all these new products, all banking on the profits you are making from one line of product, which at some point of time really pushed the burden on this and it led to financial distress. By 2001, the mounting losses forced the company into bankruptcy and BIFR intervention. Now, very funnily, times were such that in 2001, they had a huge debt of 50 crores. Okay, that was a huge debt at that time. And 50 crore debt led them to bankruptcy and BIFR. So that is where the company went in 2001 by trying to significantly diversify into multiple products. And because of that, they lost the focus and attention on the main product and the cash flows were getting affected. So what happened after that? The promoter was very, very shrewd. The promoter had vision. So he said, it is time for us to relook at whatever we did. We have made some mistakes. It's time we need to rectify and correct our course. And with that, he said, we will just focus on air coolers. We will give up all the other things. Focus on air coolers, which we had done well. And we'll also move to an asset light model so that I don't have to spend too much on capex. And we will focus on technology and innovation, which we bring on one side, and the operational efficiency on the other side. That's how we will turn around the whole thing. So with all that, the company has actually turned around. And Symphony is the world's largest air cooler manufacturers in the current periods, with present in 60 countries and a proven track record of strategic revival. So they have been very successful in reviving themselves from the distress they got into. So this is just to give you a background of the company. So let's look at it in much more detail as we go in and what steps they took what challenges they faced, all that let's look at. Now, what was their business model and their core operations? Their business focus was clearly in evaporative air coolers. So, how the air coolers work, they actually use some water, and by evaporating that and passing on through air, they create that cool atmosphere. They were energy efficient, were cost effective alternative to air conditioners. Like I said, India is a hot country. At 6:45, I'm not able to sit here without the AC on. So that is the kind of heat we are living in most places. Hot country, so, and air conditioners being run is a costlier affair. So they were looking for an alternative to air conditioners, and a lot of Indians are looking always to a cost effective different solution. So that is where they found the niche to come up with an energy efficient and cost effective alternative by way of an air cooler. And the air coolers looked like air conditioners, so it was easy to place them at home without affecting the aesthetics too much. This was the critical changing point why Symphony took over a market where others earlier were not doing huge volumes. The second thing they looked at was asset light model. In an asset light model, basically what you do is you outsource manufacturing to third party vendors. What does that mean? It enables low capital expenditure, quick scalability, and reduced operational risk. So tomorrow you don't want something in some location, you can do away with it. You can do in a different location. You are not wedded to a particular capex. Everything has a pros and cons. So in certain businesses, asset light model works well. In certain, it may not. So you have to also factor that into consideration. So asset light model is what they were looking at there. The third aspect, dimension, which they had was the innovation they brought in. The company was a significantly innovative company. Their whole idea was to come up with products which are high on innovation in terms of bringing in energy efficiency, in terms of bringing in aesthetic looks, in terms of being cost effective. So there were specific focus on this aspect, and that is what differentiated them in the market again compared to the other players, which was one of the major reasons why they could get a large market share in the initial stage also. Over the period, now they have had a significant global reach. This was not there in 2090s when they got into financial distress. This was not the case. But today, they have a significant presence in India as well as internationally because of the focused niche specialization. We'll also see how they reach those markets and how they reach the stage. In terms of marketing and distribution, they use a multi-channel approach. They have retail chains, there are dealers, they sell through e-commerce. So they have tried various channels, so multiple channels through which they are selling today. They have also focused on brand recognition through strategic advertising and promotions, which has led to their name being clearly well established in this market. So this is what they had worked on and achieved. This is how their overall operations look. In terms of strategic decision making, this is a very core driver for any growth. The initial strategic decisions is what took Symphony to the peak. They did not just reach there by, by luck or something. They focused. They address the needs of that point of time very, very clearly. They develop products for the right requirement in the market. So they could meet, there is a need, there is a feed. They could meet that. That's exactly what they did. And over that period, they significantly could expand within India because the need was there in many states and many locations. Of course, air cooler market is also dependent on certain geographical locations and where it works, where it may not be the most effective. So the bigger markets are certain pockets where it's hot and dry probably or something like that. So that is what is the higher market. Very heavy humidity may not work well with air coolers. So that is a market where their market share will also be, or market size itself will get reduced. But dry heat areas, market share or market size will be significant. So they could develop. And India is a very large market. Today, they have also expanded globally because they could take this technology and the products to very many other locations. One of the other things which brought them up was also the early differentiation. Like I said, prior to Symphony coming into the market, the coolers, air coolers used to look like a big machinery, piece of machinery. If you, for example, to put it in your, your terms, today you all would love to go out in a bike, but not in a TVS 50, right? So there is a huge difference in mindset in what you see as stylish, what you see as something which you can both take you somewhere. Similarly, air cooler would anyway give you the cooling effect, but it would be embarrassing to have a huge machine running and with noise coming and with it looking like you have a ton of hay sitting on that side and some water seeping all over. You need to put some protection for water. Your wires will be running everywhere. It will be open to see. Now, from that, this looks like one more AC or one more tower fan standing in the corner. It doesn't differentiate much. In addition to being stylish, etc., that is what you see on the outside, right? So it gives that aesthetic appeal and it makes it easy for people to pick it up and use it. They also focused. It's not just that they did this only. They also focused on what goes inside and how they could improve that. And they did significantly improve. So they were much more efficient and they were much more cost effective than other products which were coming. So that was the third thing. They focused on innovation-led positioning. So there was a lot of R&D which went behind their products. It was not just an assembled cooler for addressing a cooling requirement, right? There's a huge difference. Huge amount of time and energy was spent on the design, how to improve its performance and efficiency. The company spent a lot of money on R&D on all this. So this innovation-led positioning created a unique brand identity for Symphony in air coolers. So this is the key thing they did with air coolers in that point. Now, with all this, what it evolved into, it automatically led to a large market share coming in for them. So this was the biggest thing which happened, that they could capture a huge market share. That market share came because of two things. One is they grew the market, because earlier people who were not considering air coolers, looking at this, said, oh, okay, this looks so nice. Maybe I could consider air coolers to give cooling at my home, right? So they increased the market for the air coolers. That's what is meant by untapped customer expectation. So earlier customers were not even looking for it. Now they made them look for this, and in the process got them to increase the market. And in that increased market, they could gain a significant share. So that is what they worked on to ensure that they got the best out of it. So how their strategic decision making was essentially leading to this is visible from what approach they had taken towards the particular issue. Now, we would have theoretically read about many of these things in our subjects, but this is where you see it, how they have done in practice. So let's look at the timeline. What happened? A timeline from the time they got into problem and they got out and where they have come. So in the late 1990s, they took a misstep. What was the misstep? They diversified into unrelated products. They diversified into unrelated products like water heaters, washing machines, etc. Their idea was initially, probably, see, these are things which can come to anybody. Anybody could take a view. Okay, I'm selling air coolers, fine. Who are buying it? Households. Households have many other needs. So why not I start doing many white goods? These are all called white goods. Whatever equipments you put in the home, right? White good. Why don't I start doing more white goods? So I will have a bigger share of each person's wallet. Now Mr. Balasubramanian comes and only once he going to buy a air cooler, and only then when he has to replace that air cooler, he will come and buy from me. But what if I can sell his water heater requirement at home, his washing machine requirement at home, etc. So I can increase my wallet size with him, right? But such brand dilution, what happened, unfortunately led to diverted focus, and it finally led to financial distress. By 2001, the business was in deep trouble, and it led to them to be referred to BAFR. BAFR was the precursor to current IBC and all that. Today you have Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board, and under that the Act of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, and you could have companies taken to NCLT for bankruptcy, insolvency and all that. In those days, there used to be a mechanism for revival of sick industries. There was an act called SICA, Sick Industries, Industrial Companies Act, and there was a board for industrial and financial reconstruction, which considered mechanism and which considered proposals for reviving such companies. So that is what happened. But like I said, this promoter was a very intelligent person. He said, look, we have made a mistake. We have lost something, but we can turn it around. And then he came up with a plan for revival and recovery and revival, where he said, we will focus on air coolers. Do you know, for your information, today we are in 2025, 25 years after that, What does Symphony do? Air coolers, cooling systems. They did not get into water heaters, washing machines, and all that again now. They are very good in financial position. They are in a significant position, right? So that focus change led to a downfall. He said, no, we are known for being good in air coolers. So we should try and refocus there, get back where we were and become very profitable and strong financially. And because they had financial distress, he said, let's do an asset light model. Let's outsource manufacturing. No problem. I don't have enough wherewithal to manufacture something. Fine. There are enough manufacturing facilities which are available. I have the unique product, which is what is the key. Manufacturing, though, anywhere it can be done with certain controls and with certain mechanisms to ensure that your products are not copied and somebody else produces it, etc. So, by outsourcing manufacturing, he could also control costs and also scale faster. See, if you have to set up factory and then produce, etc., it takes time. But there are a lot of factories with additional capacities, etc. So you could quickly, when you want to scale up, very quickly you can get products provided you have the product design, etc., ready. So this is what he did to move away from the challenge of distress to recovery. Now, with that recovery and growth, what they did, they went for an international expansion. In 2009, they acquired IMCO in Mexico, which was into cooling solutions. And through IMCO, they entered the North American market. We all know that there is a better profitability when you are dealing with the North American market, right? That was also one big contributor. And it added by other things also, diversifying revenue in new markets. Second, whenever there was a seasonality which is affected in India, there was better seasonality. There was summer in some other part where there was an opportunity to sell. You know, this air cooler business through the year is a cycle. It's not even sales through the year. Now, as you get into summer, more air coolers get sold, and as you get into winter, lesser air coolers get sold. And some of the dry heat zones in India have extremes. They have extreme heat and extreme cold. So obviously, in the winter, nobody is going to buy a air cooler. It's not like Chennai where it's summer nearly all through the year. So that seasonality automatically was getting addressed by going global. So they could continuously produce throughout the year more, which again meant better costing, better cost benefits, etc. Right? So what is the final result as we see of the recent periods? These focus strategies help Symphony to reclaim leadership. They became leaders again. They are even today a leader in air coolers. And they could also build a sustainable global presence. From being a leader in India, now they are present in 60 countries with a global presence. Their exports are fairly significant component. They have become exceedingly well positioned. So this is the journey they went through. So in this journey, what challenges they faced initially and how they overcome, what steps they took, each one of those, let's look at. Some of this might look like something you might have heard enough times, but this is what businesses deal with day in, day out. And this is where consultants also do a great contribution or fail in contributing. So let's look at these. First challenge they faced was diversification into unrelated segments. This led to brand dilution, operational inefficiencies, financial losses. So, for example, somebody who knew the air cooler well obviously did not know how the washing machine or geysers, the technology required, the people at the manufacturing level had to be different, the marketing people had to be different. So, though it looks as though it is similar, it need not necessarily be. It's a significant scaling up. So, unless you have a significant size, you can't scale up like that. So, it led to financial losses. They thought they could do it with the profits they make from this, but it didn't work. So, finally, as I said, they went into PIFR. So, the strategic responses were to refocus on air cool business alone, get into asset light model. They but invested into R&D. Even when they were trying to get out of the financial distress, they realized that they continue to appreciate that one important thing that they have to bring to continue to uh, invest in R&D. You are able to hear well?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So, and once they went into this path, then they took the next step of growing the market. They knew that they are already leaders in India. They have a significant share. Now, when you already hold a significant share, it is very tough to fight for the additional market share. So, how do I grow? That's always the question. This how do I grow question is where people end up getting into other diversifications, etc. So, instead, this time they decided, let's grow by going to other markets. Now, I have my manufacturing, I'm there. I'm having a fairly good market share in India. So, what can I do to grow now? Okay, instead of just India, let me see where else I can sell. Now, interestingly, one of the first places they hit was Mexico. The reason they hit Mexico was Mexico is a manufacturing hub primarily supplying to North America, USA, right? Today, of course, things are a little different, etc. But even then, the manufacturing and sales out of nearby this thing is something which is a given, a requirement, a necessity. So one has to wait and see how the recent decisions by the US government is going to make changes globally. But at that time, this was a significantly good move. There was an existing structure which could reach into US. India had the potential to manufacture more. They could significantly make it work for the benefit of the group as a whole. Post that, they also expanded into many countries, right? Which really led to a scenario where their reliance on only the Indian market reduced and it enabled them to beat the seasons and work throughout. That was also an added benefit which came through in the process. With all this, a near bankrupt firm, which was referred to as BIFR, under the same leadership, could turn out to be a global leader in the air cooling industry. Now, this is significant.
move which they have been able to do. Just to give you an idea of how the market look was, right? By about 2022. So we are looking at a projection from 2022 to now. We have already reached 25. They are close to this numbers, but I have not looked at it from the financial perspective. Just to give an idea how they grew. 2001 to 21, in 20 years, they had moved to a 900 crore revenue with a EBITDA of 139 crore and a PAT of 12 crores. 112 crore PAT is a significant number for a company which was in losses and doldrum 20 years back and standing before BIFR. So from there to this, they had reached. Now 112 crores was a huge thing, a 12% PAT, right, in those days. And they are expecting to do 16-17% PAT by 25. And 2.5 times the PAT in real numbers in this 5-year period. That's the kind of growth, right? Whereas the revenue is growing slightly over 1.5 times, PAT is growing nearly 2.5 times. It's a significant amount of profitability and this thing which they have brought in to the business by the various steps they had taken in expanding. Again, to tell you, all this is coming from broadly one product. Broadly one product, which is somebody has raised an hand. Can you please put in a query into this thing? Later on, I will take all the questions together. There is a question box which is available to all of you. So let's also analyze from a market analyst perspective what they were thinking at different points of time. I don't even know what is the price of this share, right? So the key thing which we are looking at here is how the markets reacted to what they were doing. In FY16, the company had a turnover of 440 crores. We saw it had doubled by FY21, and then it's likely to touch 1,500 crores, right? And at that time, if you look at it, their price to equity, right, price to earnings was 78 times. The price to earnings was 78 times. The market considered that they are overpriced and should be sold. But why probably they were overpriced? Because people were expecting it to boom very well, right? The stock analyst's recommendations changed by FY22 when he said hold. By then you can see that the price to equity had dropped to slightly lower, 65, but still high. But by now the market was also seeing, the analysts were also seeing that the company is going to do significantly well, and their projections and expectations which they consider and publish in their stock analyst reports indicated significant growth. So they had said hold. And at a later date, the market, when they knew that FY25 projections are going to be 1,500 and the price to equity is going to be around 33, they were indicating a buy position. So significant move in the market also as to how it perceives and it moves up when the company does well. And the company is seen to do well, A. B. is poised to do well and is recognized that it is poised to do well by the market. Now, a company being poised to do well alone is not enough. The market should recognize that. Both, if they are there, then there is a significant move to acquire those shares. So what probably led to this, as I was explaining, right? In FY16, there were strong financials, right? It still had a strong financials. They had good EV, they had good revenues, they had profitable, all that was there. But it was considered to be overvalued because there is only certain amount of growth which you can come, right? So with that view only at that point, it was looked at as sell. By FY22, as I told you, this thing was hold even after COVID and muted summers which were there. They still thought the company was doing well. In spite of all this, the company was doing reasonably well. So their indication was to hold the shares, not to buy, not to sell, but if you are holding, hold the positions because it's slated to do reasonably well. And by the time they moved up, now the recommendation became buy, right? Because there is an attractive growth which is possible and a reasonable valuation at which it is trading in the market. And there is strong ROE and ROCE. There is a global expansion which is happening. Then direct to consumer push is also happening. With all this, there is a significant recommendation to buy. So the analysts also look at what the company is doing. They also discuss with the company. They also discuss with key people in the company to understand what the plans are for the company and does it look reasonable that these plans are likely to be happening, etc. Of course, everybody is only estimating the future. So obviously there can be errors. Even the promoter, when he originally decided to diversify, he did it thinking that he's going to make it big. He didn't wantonly do it thinking, okay, I want to push the company down the drain. So let me go and expand and diversify into new products. No, that's not the case. Could make a mistake. How you also act on it, it's important. So Symphony's investment rating improved over the period due to a combination of earnings growth. Why did the earnings growth come? Because of the strategic decisions they took. Focus on my product. Like I said, Symphony sells one product. Maybe there are 100 variants in it. One product. Air coolers. That is the major thing. And then they brought in earnings growth by expanding globally. With all that, they improved their valuation because their profitability, everything went up. So making it a very, very interesting investment for those who are looking to invest. This is the trend line over the period of the revenue. The revenue you can see is growing, significantly growing over the period. The PAT was growing, but in a muted manner, right? Which is normally the case. The revenue you will have FY 2022, the PAT would have been hit because of the couple of years of impact from coming from COVID, etc. Though their sales could go up, they had to probably take an impact. And the most important is you can see the PE ratios have come down, which shows that it is much more fairly valued today. And the positive outlook is increasing significantly for the investment into the stock. Now, this is what the company did and company achieved. Now, arising from this, I'm going to discuss about certain scenarios and seek some answers from you. Probably at this point of time, we can, I don't know whether there's a facility to unmute, or you could put in a chat box comment and I could look at it and we can discuss this.
Sir, students can unmute themselves to ask query.
Oh, very good. Or to give answers on this. That will be good. Actually, these cases, each one I am going to take up, and then I am going to put a question and look for some thoughts from you, and then we can summarize and discuss, right? So the first one we are going to look at is more to do with financial management. Symphony had adopted an asset-light business model where it outsources manufacturing to external vendors and collects advance payments from dealers. So one side, we collect advance payments from dealers, and on the other side, we are giving the whole manufacturing to external vendors. So which means I don't have to do capital expenditure. At the same time, I also get money early. So it increases my cash flow. So by increasing this cash flow, that's how they actually came out of the financial distress in the early stages, right? So this was the background. But in FY25, Symphony is now planning to acquire a manufacturing unit overseas to gain control over its supply chain due to rising input costs globally. See, all these days we gave up manufacturing, saying, okay, we will outsource and get it manufactured by others. Just 1 second. Can you look at this? I'm just coming back. 1 second. Yeah. So, but now the company is thinking of doing exactly the opposite, acquiring a manufacturing unit, that too overseas, where costs will be higher than compared to India, of course, to gain control over its supply chain due to rising input costs globally. Now, in this context, I want your views on how will this shift from an asset-light model to owning manufacturing assets impact the company's capital structure, risk exposure, and return ratios. You are free now. Please, you can share your thoughts. The idea is to make this interactive because that's how you are supposed to be responding to your exam also. So let's see what thoughts you have on this. You can either speak up or you can put chats. So somebody has said there will be debt component entering. Yes, there could be debt. Any other thoughts? ROE will be impacted. Financial ratios will get hit. ROCE may reduce. Good. So those are what will be visible, right? Companies beta will very good increase because of risk, financial risk. CapEx will increase. Absolutely good. So now let me just consider whatever you have given, and also first, before that, give my thoughts also, and then take up whatever you have said and more, because that's the whole idea. Because there is no single, please understand, in all these things, there is no single given answer, right? There could be much more dimensions which you can write about. Forex exposure, someone has raised. Forex risk, right? And somebody has said initially profits might fall, then increase. Perfect. So first, let's look at the answer I put here, and I will also deal upon some of the points you have put here. Owning manufacturing facilities implies a shift from variable cost model, right? Outsourcing is a variable cost model to a fixed cost model, right? This means more capital employed and fixed asset base. Now, very, very theoretically speaking, what will happen is when you put your own capex, there is a certain return which is also expected there, right? When you give it to an outsider, he is going to expect a return on the capital he is going to employ. So the variable cost would, in some manner, include the cost of investments which he is making to make this work, right? So first is, like somebody also mentioned, there will be an increase in debt or equity funding. It will affect the debt equity ratio. So now if I am strong financially, fine, no problem. This is something I can take up. It can lead to a drop in ROAS. Again, somebody had mentioned that. And return on assets. These are two critical things one looks at for performance, right? Return on capital employed and return on assets. But it will be in the short term, these will be affected, right? Because there will be capital investment which will be happening, and then the returns from that will be only slowly ramping up. It cannot come overnight. Somebody mentioned about financial risk. Yes, there will be an increased financial risk through higher fixed costs. Because once you have put capital, it is sunk. You can't retrieve it. So you have certain given costs then. But there should be a strategic thinking behind all this. So this move must be strategically justified by expected cost savings, supply chain control, and long-term margin improvement. So now I will talk about some examples, right? Very, very extreme examples, so we get some understanding of the concept. Own manufacturing facility versus outsourced manufacturing. Now, let's suppose the government wants to build aircraft for its Air Force in their own design. Will they do own manufacture or outsource manufacture? They would say, even if the cost is more, I want to have control over the design and the product which is coming. I want to control the design. I want to ensure nobody can copy my designs. So I would rather do own manufacture. Whereas, where it is easy to replicate, easy to do. For example, if you take a product like biscuits, especially in India, right? Biscuit, the product mix is very, very simple thing. Maybe there are one or two small elements which these, the brand manufacturers hold close to their heart. Beyond that, it is a simple mechanism. They need huge volumes. So they actually outsource most of the manufacture because they don't lose control on anything over that. They sell because of the brand name, not because of availability. They sell primarily because of their brand name. So in my brand name, whether it is manufactured by me or anybody else, it will get sold. Right? But let's take another extreme. I'm not even talking about manufacture. So let's say service. If I say I will outsource my audit service to somebody else, will the client come to me? He might think, why should I go? I would rather go to somebody who's being outsourced to if he is so good. I'm coming to you because you have certain reputation and brand name and quality and all that. So I don't know whether that will be there if you do it through somebody else. So you have to balance all these things in a commercial enterprise. So let's forget government, let's forget professional services. In a commercial enterprise, what do you have to balance when you have to look at this thing? One, if you outsource all your manufacturing, tomorrow if the vendors decide to arm twist you, you are in trouble. You won't have product to sell. You need products to sell. So how do you manage that? You can manage that provided you have multiple vendors who are not likely to get aggregated. For example, if you take internationally, some of these large hotel chains, they don't own even one hotel. For example, we say Hyatt, everywhere Hyatt you see, 5,000 Hyatt hotels are there or something like that. I'm just giving an example. Okay, I'm maybe overrating, but I'm just giving an example. Hyatt does not own one single hotel. All are owned by somebody else. They are only managing. Now, how they are able to manage that? Because they know 5,000 owner properties, 5,000 people are not going to aggregate together and suddenly one day come and arm twist them and saying, okay, I won't pay you X percentage royalty from now, I'll pay you only Y percentage less. But if you are dependent on one or two large manufacturers, then the manufacturer can arm twist you, saying that, look, it's no longer viable. I need to get better returns. I need to get better profitability, etc. So, yeah, where you need control, you need to have your own manufacturer. Second, there should be perceivable cost differences, cost savings. Third is whether you are able to raise funds at a better rate or he is able to raise funds at a better rate. So normally what happens when you are in an early stage company and your credit ratings are not great and all that, you won't easily get debt. So if you have to scale up, you have only two choices. Either you dilute your equity significantly if you are able to get somebody, or get debt at a very high rate. Both would put you into also a significant financial risk. Whereas there might be others who might readily have equity to do some projects. They may expect a higher return than what it would mean if you put your own factory. But initially to scale up, that might be a better way of doing it because you don't have to invest so much. You don't have to financially risk yourself. You are de-risking. So you have to balance risk appetite and risk which you are taking. You have to balance. So you have to look at all these together. You cannot only look at debt equity ratio. You cannot look at only ROE. You cannot look at only ROCE. You cannot look at only the financial risk or the forex risk. You will have to balance all this and see where you would like to stand. What are the sensitivities if something goes wrong? One or the other will hold good or not. Right? So this is the crux of the whole thing. See, if everything goes well, owning should be better than outsourcing. Theoretically, if everything goes exactly, so it never does, no, because first of all, your financial position may not be the same as his financial position. So the rates at which you can get or the risk you can take, then the projected business may happen, may not happen. That is one side of the risk which is there. Then even labor costs, because you are a large company, you have this thing could be different than when you outsource. There are so many aspects which comes into play. So it's only in theory we have this, that everything given to be the same. It doesn't happen so. There are multiple variables always. So you look at the pros and cons and look at it. In 2001, because I did not have money, it was a smart move to do outsourcing. In 2025, when I am sitting on a cash pile, it's again a smart move. What are the choices? When I have a cash pile, what are the charges? I can give back the money to the shareholder saying, here, take more dividend. Instead of 10 rupees dividend, let me give you 200 rupees dividend. Right? But then that money is going out of the business. It's not getting employed. Whereas if I am able to use that to reduce my costs overall, my profitability will be better, my growth will be better, etc. So at the same time, my financial risk is also mitigated because I have the money. I always give this as an example. The acquisition of WhatsApp was a $19 billion deal or something, right? In that, four billion was the cash cost. Now, at that time, Facebook was sitting with 4 billion cash. So it's no problem at all for them. And their annual cash flow was 11 billion. No problem for them to do that deal. Whereas there is a historical case of SIFI buying India World. I don't know how many have read that case study. They bought it for 500 crores. That was a huge talked about thing. 500 crores was paid for buying India World by SIFI. 500 crores was the deal's value. SIFI's cash flow itself was less than 100 crores ever. And SIFI was sitting with probably a few crores of cash. So it was trying to buy a company, assuming it will get cash in the future, right? So the risks are different. Facebook acquisition of WhatsApp is risk-free in a way, because it's all sitting money, right? So this is one of the key things we should consider always. Now, going to the second question, see, like it was explained, this is an integrated solutions which was being looked at. So you have to look at various things. In fact, question papers will also be like that. So the second question we are going to be looking at is impairment of assets. Ind AS 36, impairment of assets. What factors should Symphony consider in the period around 2000s, assuming Ind AS was applicable at the time or the earlier, right? When the company was still in the process of reviving itself. Now, while you put some answers on the chat, some more questions. Somebody has asked, how does depreciation affect financial risk? Depreciation does not. It is the capex, the money we go and invest. Right? Depreciation is only a book entry. Whether I do it for 5 years, 10 years, like that it goes. Right? But cash, depreciation in an indirect way, it might have an impact. It affects your, PAT and then PE ratios. To that extent, it might have an impact. But if you outsource also, it's going to have. Outsourcing does not come free. So there will be cost. Like I said, he will include in his variable cost the cost for the manufacturing facility which he has invested in, etc. Yes, you can ask questions in the chat box also, no problem, right? So if there are any suggestions in terms of this Ind AS 36, can you all put in so we can look at that? When a company follows asset-light model, there will be minuscule impairment of assets. From a physical asset perspective, impairment of assets can be minuscule, but many of these companies may also have a lot of R&D assets, that is intangibles. So that needs to be considered. However, yes, from a physical asset perspective, yes. Yeah, so I see that for impairment, there are various things which are coming up. So recoverable amounts of copyrights, trademarks, etc. to be considered. Technology changes to be considered. Then goodwill impairment to be considered. Future economic benefit, yes, very valid point. Yes, since it decided to go asset light from 2000, only focus would be on impairment of the existing assets, etc. There are also external indicators like market decline, technology shifts, economic environment, regulatory changes. Now, this is general, but in this particular case, there was no market decline. Market was there. The challenge was I got into financial difficulties. So, yeah. Okay. So now let's look at the particular subject matter. So the thing somebody was mentioning, recoverable amount is, what is recoverable amount? It is higher of fair value less cost to sell or value in use, right? So if I'm able to sell it today, what can I sell this assets for? That's fair value less cost to sell. Value in use is, okay, by putting these assets to use, what kind of future economic benefit? Somebody mentioned that also. Future economic benefit which can come. Now, typically, value in use is calculated using a DCF model, discounting the future cash flows and arriving at the present value of that, right? So, impairment indicators are decline in market trend, increase in interest rate, physical damage or obsolescence to the plant, regulatory changes, etc. Now, in their case, what was the indicator? The indicator was that they were unable to operate, right? They were unable to operate because of financial distress. So there won't be possibility of production, etc. And if you leave the assets as it is, it may decay. So strictly speaking, whatever plant and machinery they had at that time, it is quite likely that they may not have been impaired. What has been impaired is their ability to run as a business. So that is why if you look at the IBC and all that, they are talking about reviving the company. Forget the promoter, forget the creditors. Let's settle them. Whatever losses are there, they will bear. But the assets can live. The facility can live, right? So that is what is the concept which has come. So essentially, there may not be a significant impairment in that, but yes, in terms of brand, in terms of any of those intangibles, there could have been a serious erosion because the brand, of course, he has been able to revive it. But at that point of time, the brand would have been looked at as gone. Because The trust and faith would have gone in it when the company went down. These are typical examples of what happens. But the physical assets per se may not have this thing. No, the increase in interest rate, if there was in the market, is an indicator. It's not that it was there. None of these were there in their case. There was no decline in market demand. Market demand was there. I was not able to produce because I, made mistakes. There was no interest in increased rates. There was no physical damage or obsolescence to the plant. There were no regulatory changes affecting production. It was my own creation that I went into distress. That's why I said the physical assets may not have probably an impairment when you test for it, but the intangibles would have suffered significant impairment. So second point, let's look at. The second one is focusing. The first one was more focusing on the financial management. Second one is more focusing on the cost, strategic cost management. One of the key steps taken when Symphony was on the path to work a turnaround, it moved away from multiple products to focus on a core product line for air coolers. Right? They decided, I'm not going to do multiple products. I'm not going to do geysers. I'm not going to do washing machines. I will just do air coolers. Right? So now, in this context, the question is, how focus on a core product line as opposed to a widely diversified product lines help in strategic cost management? Now, here also I would invite your thoughts. Yes, the answer is not actually comprehensive. Like I said, it is just a thought to discuss. So intangible is something, if there were intangibles. In those days, intangible accounting was not a major accounting thing. So if you have not even accounted, there won't be impairment. But from a academic perspective, yes, that's a key thing which could have happened. Yeah. So economies of scale, right? Horizontal merger, because you can't see the screen, I'm reading out all the thoughts. Synergy of already having extensive R&D in core product line. Specialization of labor. Focus on core product line releases the resources, right? R&D focused in a particular product and technology. Increase focus by managerial team, right? Operational efficiency. Simplified activity-based costing. Perfect. Focus strategy will bring brand value and market share increase. Perfect. So here I will talk about again the example I was talking about. See, when you go to a supermarket, in one brand of biscuit itself, do you know how many SKUs they store in the supermarket? There would be at least 15, 20 varieties of biscuits there. Do you know why it is there? Because customer expectations keep varying. So if you have one or two SKUs only, that is, you have only one or two pack size as well as the product, right? The brand will not be perceived as being strong and well established. And the customers come with different tastes. So you may miss out many customers. Now, this is on the front end. But look at the back end. If I have put up a factory where I have to do some Marie biscuit, where I have to do some True biscuit, where I have to do some Bourbon, where I have to do some etc., like that, right? Cream biscuit. Now, imagine the complexity I bring in. So the scale of operations is not fully benefited. So every time I change, there has to be so many settings which will have to be changed. So there will be a lot of downtime in the production process. So again, giving a practical example, especially in a populous country like India, if you take manufacturing of biscuits, many of these outsourced manufacturing units will be only producing one type of biscuit throughout. So in huge volumes. So he doesn't have to stop his machinery for changing any settings or anything. He just keeps running because he is only producing one variety. After the production is over, the same one variety will probably go into 4 or 5 different pack sizes. That is the only variance you will find in that factory. Otherwise, the factory will be producing only one variety. Yeah, I don't want to go into specific name. Nearly all big names do the same thing. So only when it comes to the C&F agent or their warehouse, etc., then they distribute multiple varieties which would have come from different factories. Very keenly, when you look at 20 products and look at their location of manufacture, you will find that there is a significant difference in all this. Everything is learning. There is a strategic thinking behind it. Now, how are we going to contribute that? These are the ways. Very nice answers were given for this, right? So, yes, whatever you are mentioning are very critical in this thing. Economies of scale, right? The biggest benefit is economies of scale. You can have higher volume because of which you will have lower per unit cost because production cost will come down. Bulk purchasing is possible because you only need certain varieties of inputs also. Optimized manufacturing, you don't have to be changing the settings often. It leads to better supplier negotiations. You get significant benefits. Then reduced operational complexity also. Lower inventory, lower logistics costs, fewer SKUs means simple supply chains, less warehousing there, lower carrying costs, everything will come into place. Focused R&D and innovation. Now, when I say fewer SKUs, here means that if I do only air coolers and not do all the things, then obviously I need those 5 models, 20 models of air coolers to be manufactured, to be stored, to be sent, etc. I don't have to manage inventory of water heaters. I don't have to manage inventory of water coolers. I don't have to manage inventories of washing machines, etc. So which increases the volumes of inventory management. Overall, the inventory can be kept less if you deal with lesser SKUs. Then focused R&D and innovation. So you are, somebody again mentioned all these points you have also mentioned. Very good. Instead of spreading resources thin, companies can invest deeply into research in one area. From the marketing side also, lower customer acquisition costs. That's a significant benefit which can come. Lower customer acquisition cost, a clear product focus, right? And a strong brand recall. Strategic resource allocation avoids cost leakage, right? From underperforming products. Generally, when you diversify, some products will do well, some products will not do well, some inefficiency will be there, all that will get missed out. So this gives you much better optimization on all things and competitive pricing power. So these are the benefits of that. The second question coming from the same thing is core product focus always ideal, or when does it make sense to diversify? Again, let's take some quick answers on this because we have a lot more to cover. So let's take some quick answers and then move forward. So is core focus always the right solution, or does it make sense to diversify?
Sir, am I am I
Yes,
audible?
yes.
So, for core focus as well as times of turnaround times, it is better to diversify.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Somebody has put diversify when market is saturated. When our product can be easily imitated, then it makes sense to diversify, right? Yes. The point is, yes, nothing is static. There is no single truth, right? So there are times when diversification makes sense. And these are just some examples only. While core focus helps in cost management, diversification is also useful. One, market saturation, somebody was mentioning, right? Now, Samsung expanding from phones to chips. This is an example. Because there is a saturation in the phone market. I keep on trying to get more money from phone market. It's not going to come. Synergies, right? How Amazon from e-commerce went to AWS. When there are synergies, right? So these are things which make sense to diversify. So there are a lot more reasons and rationale. So every time you have to look at it with, okay, what are the risks which are coming? Whether we are reasonably perched to address those risks. It's not that we should not take risk. If you don't take risk, you can't do business. That's the key thing to understand, right? It is only to know when you can take risk and what is the appetite. Yes, financially strong is also one good ground for looking at diversification. Third scenario we are looking at is in the same story, compliance and governance. So Symphony operates in multiple countries. We saw that it operates in multiple countries and is governed by foreign compliance laws also. Assuming it had not reported the acquisition of the Australian entity, they also bought an entity in Australia, very good brand which they bought in. It does large-scale cooling solutions. Assuming it had not reported the acquisition of Australian entity in a timely manner to stock exchange, it may have impacted the customer confidence. So assuming this, I'm not saying they did this, assuming this, right? If that was so, tell me, what do you think are the SEBI LODR regulations about disclosure obligations regarding an acquisition? Any thoughts on it? Quickly. SEBI LODR is also there for your, actually this is how it will be. The questions will also come like this. So it will test your knowledge about company law, LODR, taxation, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So somebody has said price sensitive information. It's a price sensitive information. So there are specific requirements under SEBI LODR, what needs to be reported. So the first stage is when the board approves the acquisition, there has to be a reporting. Then whenever a definitive agreement is signed, again, there has to be a reporting, including the deal terms, how they are going to fund it, etc., broadly. And then any material developments must be disclosed. So there are specific disclosure requirements under LODR. So tomorrow when you are advising a company, right, when this discussion comes about, oh, let's look at buying a company, you should also say, hey, wait, I'm not here to advise only on doing a due diligence or looking at the profitability of the company, but I should also remind you LODR requires you to file these things. Tomorrow, if you're going to place this in board, please remember tomorrow you need to also inform stock exchange. Is that not part of my role? That is my multidisciplinary role, right? This is exactly what is being envisaged under this paper also. Then there are shareholder approvals which will have to be taken, and their outcome of the shareholders approval will have to be reported to the stock exchange. On completion of the acquisition, again, it needs to be disclosed. Post acquisition, the financial impact of that gets reflected from that quarter. So it needs to be brought into the quarterly results. Then any related party transactions with that party will get added. That also needs to be disclosed. Again, another compliance related thing. How can strong internal controls and audit frameworks under Companies Act 2013 help Symphony avoid such governance lapses? So if you were the CFO, right? If you were the CFO, what kind of controls you would put in to ensure that something like this happens and it is not reported? Having the right mix of independent directors. Compliance, internal audit, secretarial audit. Yes. So let's look at it. So this is what is the requirement, right? There is a responsibility on the directors. Audit committee should oversee statutory compliances. So what you do is adopting frameworks like COSO, implementing internal systems, and also compliance audits will help identify lapses early to ensure that you are prepared and you are addressing these requirements in a timely manner. Yes, ICOFAR or equivalent, COBIT, COSO, absolutely. Somebody has pointed that out also. Now we are going to come for some rapid fire questions, 5 MCQs, which will also be there in your this thing. In FY16, Symphony Limited was recommended as a sell due to its valuation at a PE ratio of 78, despite strong market position. By FY25E, the company's PE is forecasted to drop to 33.1, while PAT is projected to grow to 250 crore. Which of the following best explains the shift in recommendation from sell to buy? A, increase in earnings and normalization of valuation. D, decline in revenue and profits. Increase in earnings and value per share in the same ratio this period. Expansion of fixed assets. A. Somebody has said C. So let's look at the answer. A. The reason is Symphony's earnings are projected to rise significantly while its valuation has become more reasonable compared to FY16. Right? Perfect. Second, Symphony Limited reported a revenue of 1,039 crore and EBITDA of 161 crore. What was its EBITDA margin? I've given simple examples here. Maybe the numbers will be a little more complex to calculate in the exam. Of course, with a calculator doable. And that is also permitted. 15.5. A lot of people have hit it right on that. Approx. MCQ 3. Symphony Limited acquired Australia-based Climate Technologies Private Limited in 2018 to strengthen its global presence. This acquisition is best characterized as what? A forward integration, vertical integration, horizontal integration, or a conglomerate diversification. So B, C, 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 D, and it goes on, right? The correct answer is C, horizontal integration, because both are in the same industry. The acquisition is expanding Symphony's reach in the same sector across geographies. So horizontal integration. Forward is taking it to your customers also into your fold. and getting into that business. Vertical is to take your suppliers also into your fold and getting into that business. Conglomerate is going into diversification into other products. Yeah. The next question is, Symphony Limited has projected the following financials, right? Which we saw earlier also. A financial analyst wants to evaluate Symphony's operational efficiency by calculating EBITDA margin and determine which year showed the strongest improvement in profitability. EBITDA margin is calculated as EBITDA by revenue. Based on the table above, in which year did Symphony show the highest EBITDA margin? I see B and C coming. The strongest EBITDA margin is in FY25, right? 19%. The last MCQ on this case study, if Symphony projected ROS in FY25 is 24.4 and its cost of capital is 14%. So ROS is 24, COC, cost of capital is 14%. What does this indicate? There is a value destruction. There is a no impact on investor returns. There is an economic value creation or a neutral performance. Yeah, many have put C perfectly on the dot. There is an economic value creation when ROS is better than the capital, cost of capital. So what you have to pay for getting that capital is lower than what you are making from the business. So obviously there is a value creation. So just to synopsis summary of this case study, and then maybe we can take a 10-minute bio break and continue on the second case study, right? So focus over diversification, staying committed to core products help Symphony regain brand clarity and market leadership. That was the first thing, right? What we learned from this. Asset-light model for capital efficiency, especially when you are in deep trouble with capital. Compliance builds trust. Timely disclosures and strong governance boosted investor confidence and ensured regulatory stability. That example was only an assumed example. They have been always filing it in time. A benchmark in business turnaround, right? From bankruptcy to global dominance. This is what they have achieved. Thank you all. What we can do is we'll take a 10-minute break. Right now it is 8:08. 8:18 we will commence with the second case study. I suppose that's fine with everybody. Good. Yeah. Yeah. Good evening, all. We are now going to look at the second case study of the day. This is also again a live case from the past. And in this, I was also involved. So, of course, it has been changed to make it confidential, things being removed, etc. So, essentially, what we are going to look at is the second case study, which is about the story of, say, a company called Golden Grain Naturals Private Limited from India. It was making nutritious cereal bars. So they started in India as a nutritious cereal bar company, and they reached a stage where they were then looking to expand. So they looked at East Africa. So why did they choose East Africa? Why Kenya in East Africa? Let's start with that. So Kenya is a strategic trade location with improving industrial infrastructure. So good industrial infrastructure is required for you to be able to manufacture, etc. Government support was there for agro-processing units. Agro-processing units are much less polluting companies. So another positive thing. Rising demand for healthy, affordable snacks driven by urbanization and lifestyle shifts. It's happening everywhere. So when I was a kid, there was no, cereal bar. But now, bar. The case study is this. We are going to evaluate business model and scalability, capital investment and cost structure, profitability outlook and export potential, supply chain, sourcing, compliance risks in emerging markets. So this is what we are going to be looking at. So this is called as the GG Kenya project. So that's what is the cover in this. So they set up the project in Kenya. It runs on a semi-automated basis, right? It produces cereal bars on a semi-automated basis, right? It's structured for flexibility. The whole operational flow is raw material intake, batching, baking, packaging, dispatch. Why batched? Because there are again multiple SKUs. You go to a supermarket, you will find cereal bars of different types. There will be 10, 12 different things, right? So each one will have to be produced. So you have to produce in batch. So it also becomes convenient for them to do it in batch because all their costing, all their input quantities, the bills of material which they need to put in physically, all that will be very clearly batch-wise prepared. So it is easier to execute also. So the key features of this plant was it's a 12 metric ton per day capacity with about 8 plus health-focused SKUs, different kinds, high fiber, protein, low sugar, all that variants. Ingredients, the grains were to come locally, a lot of nuts were to come locally, selective imports, right, which will come from elsewhere. We need to balance the shelf life of those, the nutrition capability of those, etc. On-site packaging. Either it's flow wrap or pillow packs which are made. And distribution strategy is the primary transport is outsourced. So from the factory, it goes to various this thing. Last mile delivery is handled in-house. Asset light warehousing, right? We use third-party storage. Export lines handled by contract packers to maintain scalability. So Golden Grain's model ensures cost efficiency, product diversity, and export readiness, backed by smart sourcing and lean logistics. This was what was the concept of the company. So this Kenya was founded in 2022 by a second generation entrepreneurs who had already been successful in India, right? Food industry veterans. They also tied up with Savannah Roots Capital, an Africa-focused VC fund. Somebody had to also come in as funder for this thing. So they were the VC fund who were coming in as equity partners into it. The founding team, what they were bringing is their deep experience in FMCG, agri-business, nutraceuticals, etc. Right? And the VC was bringing in the equity, additional equity. They were not the single equity owner, but they were bringing in a significant portion of the equity. And when they chose for East Africa, why did they choose Kenya? It was a strategic trade hub. Kenya itself has a lot of market because it's one of the larger country, more populous country there. And with rising disposable income, Kenyan living standard of living has been increasing. There are many countries nearby under the COMESA region. It's called cooperative. That is, there is a inter country council of multiple countries, because of which there is tax-free movement which can be done within these countries, etc. So there are a lot of benefits within the COMESA region. If you are selling from one COMESA region to another, if it is manufactured there. There was a supportive government incentives under the Big Four agenda. That is the land, tax, machinery benefits, and employee benefits, right? Strong middle class. So there is improving, potential for market there itself. Stable governance and improving infrastructure. Stable governance at that time, it need not be always, right? At that point of time, it had stable governance. So what was the vision of this company? To become East Africa's most trusted health snack brand, focus on cereal-based wellness product, expand into COMESA, that's what I was talking about, and also the GCC market. GCC market is the Gulf Cooperation Council market, which is the UAE to Saudi Arabia, that chain of countries. All those together are called the GCC. There again, once you get into one country, you can easily move it to other countries because they are having a good export-import arrangement between themselves. Right? So this was the background. So the strategic decision making was based on very, very balanced decision considering capacity, cost, market strategy, etc. So 12 metric ton per day capacity to support multiple SKU. So it's not one product which they will do. They will do multiple products there in the same line because it's, for that size doesn't help you to put multiple lines for doing separate products. It will not be able to sell so much. So you have to also plan that. The scale was aligned with retail demand. So in India, because of the population and the kind of reach we can have, we would normally put a separate line for the fiber product, the protein product, the diabetic friendly bars, etc. Because there is so much volume you can produce. But in these regions, you cannot produce so much and sell. So obviously you have to keep one line which will do multiple products. So which means you will have to balance that. There will be some downtime for changeover, etc. You have to build that in. The sourcing strategy was very clear. Local sourcing of oats and millet to reduce costs because these were readily available and it's available in plenty there. So ideal is to buy it there. It reduces cost. It doesn't have to be moved, etc. Imports would be from UAE and South Asia for nutrients and flavor compounds. Because those are some critical inputs which are required. You need high quality inputs. So you import that from the right source. The pricing and margin was done in a manner that there will be at least 30 to 35% gross margin. Entry-level SKUs priced for urban retail penetration. Like, for example, we used to have that in India, the 5 rupee or 10 rupee price point. So, if you go to, again, supermarket or this thing, you will find a bar which is either a 10 rupee, 20 rupee bar, right? The reason is they change the quantity to fit that. The reason is those are price points. If I sell for 12 rupees and 10 rupees, the ones at 10 rupees are likely to be picked up easier because these are specific price points. Each country has that, and each this thing based on the kind of currencies they use and the denominations they use. These price points are very critical. So the entry level SKUs were priced using those price points and accordingly backward. The whole product was backward to that. And export grade variants aligned to international healthy snacks. The kind of snacks you need to sell in GCC and in COMESA will be different. Even the name could seem the same, but the quality would vary because the expectations are different. So it is to cater to that, you need to necessarily differentiate. The capital was planned at $1.8 million towards machinery, utilities, and food grade infrastructure, and also some working capital. For all that, 1.8 million was the capex which was envisaged. Investment structure was designed to support scale, efficiency, and investor interest. The strategic choices set a strong foundation for sustainable growth into the market. Challenges they were facing were like this. First one was the currency risk. Imports of flavor enhancer, packaging, additives are vulnerable to Kenyan shilling depreciation. It increases landed cost and squeezes margins. So like we face in India also, imports, currency risk. Energy and utilities was the next area. Fuel and electricity prices are volatile due to import dependency. Impacts of energy intensive process like baking, cooling, storage. Because of that, this business will be impacted by significant changes in energy costs. Skilled manpower shortage. There was scarcity of trained staff for food safety, QC, and packaging. There are a lot of people available, but trained for food safety, QC, and packaging, especially because we are handling food stuff, right? That was a problem. So that part was mitigated by training programs and using semi-automated lines. So reduce manual intervention by semi-automated lines, and then introduce training programs to ensure that you get trained people for your this thing. You take untrained people, train them, get them into the work. Because people were available. Regulatory uncertainty, risk from shift in import duties, VAT, labeling laws, requires continuous policy of monitoring and compliance updates. So, for example, you are going from India, you are used to certain things. You have a labeling requirement in India, you have a FSSA requirement in India. You knew certain things. You know the duty structure in India. You know the VAT structure in India. Now you are going to a new geography. You need to consider all this. Not only the import duties, the VAT, which a business consultant would normally give you easily, but you need to also understand the local labeling law, the local weights and measures requirements. There could be many such things. Do you know, for example, in India itself, we have a requirement that certain products have to be only packed in certain quantities. So you can have 50 gram, 100 gram, 150 gram like that. You cannot have 37 grams, 74 grams, etc. But there are also exceptions given to that. You can have a 10 rupee pack, 20 rupee pack, 50 rupee pack, right? Where the weight could be different. So there are complex regulations around all this. And then in each of the packing, what needs to be printed? In each of the packing, what needs to be printed also varies. So all this will have to be also considered. Even the shelf life of products, what you consider in India could be different from what they consider in some other country. For example, we might say that if it is a cereal bar, from the manufacture date, 2 years life could be there, or 180 days life could be there. There could be countries which could say instead of 180 days, I think in India it's 180 days. Instead of 180 days, it could be 1 year. Or there could be countries which could say 90 days. So you have to understand. You have to consider that in your planning. Then inflation and logistics, rising food inflation and local freight costs. Because distribution is one of the biggest costs in all this, especially in African countries, the transport costs are heavy. Calls for frequent pricing revalidation. So you may have to, all this may have to ensure that you have to increase or manage your prices periodically or change something. So the projected financial performance was a gradual revenue buildup starting from year one, break even by third year, right? And then growth driven by volume expansion and multi-market reach. So by going into multiple markets, not only within Kenya, but going outside Kenya into COMESA and maybe some amount into GCC, etc. The profitability projections were that EBITDA margin to stabilize to 18 to 20% by year 4. PAT turns positive by year 2 itself. Initial year, some extraneous costs are there. Fixed costs optimized through higher production volumes. And the cash flow and balance sheet reflected strong working capital cycle by year 3. So first couple of years, there was support required. By then, it gets into a strong position. One of the key things is to control receivable and efficient inventory turnover. Then maintaining a healthy equity to debt ratio with limited borrowings. Increase return earnings to support reinvestment into the business. So this was how it was, project was envisaged, right? And a plan, so 5-7 year plan was made for becoming a sustainable business into this thing. Cost structure, the unit cost breakdown was 50 to 60% was raw material and packing. So material cost was huge. 5 to 8% was towards labor and utilities. Remaining was towards other overheads, including management costs, including selling expenses, etc. The contributions margins are targeted to be 40 to 45%, depending on SKU type. Premium variants had higher margins, obviously higher ingredient cost also. Economy SKUs were tightly priced, and for mass market reach, it was by volume. So scalability and margin control through high volume sales over a period. So you are able to manage the margin. So this was what was planned and effected. The capital investment and funding was that 1.8 million was spent on this thing. 60% came as equity by the promoters and the VC. 40% only was taken as debt with a 7-year repayment and a 24-month moratorium. That 1.8 million went 35% towards production, machinery, 25% towards building and infrastructure, around 15% towards utilities. Balance was towards packing, automation, pre-op, and some amount of working capital, etc. Right? There was also tax benefits which were there in Kenya. So that was a benefit which was built into in this project. The key matrices was that IRR to be 16% over 10 years. DSCR was over 2, so which gives comfort to the lender also. That's why it was kept at 40%. Break even by year 3 itself, payback in 5 years. ROI by third year is 22%, rose at 15%, sustained at later years. 15 to 20% was the. But the sensitivity analysis is a very important thing. Just a 5% drop in price, their IRR could be affected from 16% to 9.8%. 5% input price hike, right? Sorry, 5% increase in price led to a significant IRR, huge IRR benefit. So some key SKUs, like which are high margin SKUs, if you drop them out saying that, let's do for mass market, large volume, it drops the IRR by nearly 3.5%. It weakens the project viability. So most important is to also do the sensitivity and the mix of SKUs, because some of these products, they may be actually volume-wise very small, but they are very critical because they contribute largely for your bottom line. It need not necessarily come only from the mass market volume business, but it can come from these niche products which are small volume but high margins. They are very important ingredients. So we need to understand the importance of each of these. So the product mix is very, very critical to consider. So the insights are product mix discipline is very important, because one key product being taken out could weaken your project viability. Pricing control, because you have some imports, you have very high sensitivity to a 5% change in prices. That's very critical to do it. Raw material cost optimization, because nearly 60% is your material cost, including packaging. So material cost is 60%. So very, very critical to maintaining profitability. And to gain financial resilience, it should do scalable volumes. Without the volumes, you cannot reach that financial resilience. So this is the background of what was done. Now in that, we are going to again take some scenarios and questions so that we can finish this, and then we can discuss all other points which we can take up, right? So let's look at the first scenario where GG Kenya is considering an expansion. Now they originally invested 1.8 million, right? They went through the roof. They have done well. So in year 3, they are thinking of expansion of its production capacity through installation of a second high-speed packaging line. This investment, estimated at 700,000, is expected to boost export capacity and result in 50% increase in annual revenues starting year 4. The company currently maintains a healthy DSCR of 2 and project IRR of 16%, with ROCE expected to stabilize at 15% from year 3. The management is now debating whether raising new debt or diluting promoter equity to fund this expansion. So what are your thoughts? Should GG Kenya opt for debt funding or equity funding, considering its existing loan repayment obligations and DSCR? What are your views? Any thoughts? Quickly, if you can put on the chat box, then mix of debt and equity, depend on cost of equity and cost of debt. Okay, so let's look at this thing. Before that, let's look at the second question also. How might this decision impact IRR, ROCE, and company's long-term financial risk profile? So let's look at right? So given the strong DSCR, see, the project has gone as per plan. The project has gone as per plan, and by year 3, they are in a position, in fact, they have gone beyond market-wise. They are expecting that they can do much more than what was projected. That's why we are now looking at a second line. And our DSCR is good, our IRR is good. So given the strong DSCR and manageable current debt, opting for debt funding may preserve promoter control and improve ROS if the return from the new line exceeds borrowing cost. Somebody also mentioned about that. What it all depends on the cost. So whether the ROS will be more than the borrowing cost. However, increasing debt will raise fixed interest commitments, slightly lowering IRR in the short term. Equity dilution, while safer for cash flows, may reduce overall shareholder return. So work with debt in a strong balance sheet like this. Of course, you are taking risk, subject to cost being compared, right? So let's look at the second one. The operations team at GG Kini observed inefficiencies in raw material procurement and SKU level production scheduling. The company currently sources wheat flour and key additives through monthly imports, but fluctuation global prices have caused material cost volatility, impacting contribution margins. The recent sensitivity analysis reveals that 5% increase in material cost reduces IRR from 16 to 12%, while a 5% decline in selling price drops IRR to 9.87%. So to stabilize cost, management is evaluating two options: entering into long-term contracts with suppliers to lock in pricing, rationalizing low margin SKUs and focusing on high margin variants with better volume traction. So they are looking at two things. One is enter into long-term contracts with suppliers so you get a locked in pricing. The second is rationalizing low margin SKUs, focusing on high margin variants with better volume traction. So how can GG Kini apply strategic cost management to maintain IRR and contribution margin in the face of material price inflation? And what are the benefits and risks of SKU rationalization in improving cost control? Any thoughts on this? Long-term contracts with suppliers? Yeah, but I'm asking what kind of benefits it's going to give. Yes, that's one this thing which. Yeah, so let's look at the answers, and any additional thoughts, please add. Right. Entry into long-term contract will help in cost control, and future 5% increase will improve IRR, will reduce the impact of inflation. Yes. Apply standard costing concepts and control by exception. Prices will not be volatile and lesser impact on IRR. Yes. So these are some very good answers. So first is long-term vendor contract offers procurement cost predictability, right? And margin stability. I'm not saying it is going to improve or anything. It provides margin stability. I know I'm going to buy at 100. I know I'm going to sell at 105. I will make 5. Now, market may actually drop to 95. I'm losing a potential 5 rupee additional profit, but that leaves it unpredictable. Now I'm bringing in cost predictability. I'm not bringing in cost reduction. It's a cost predictability. So whenever you do hedge, it brings in predictability and stability and not necessarily a cost reduction. Let's understand very clearly. Hedge is risk protection. Hedge is not cost reduction, right? So generally what they do, right? So that's why I've also said, however, long-term vendor contracts also have the effect of opportunity being lost when the current market prices become lower compared to the contracted prices. So an ideal strategy for a company could be to look at long-term vendor contracts for part of the requirement while leaving a part open to market prices to match the risk appetite of the entity. So no company does generally, companies do part hedging. They don't do 100% hedging. Some companies have a very conservative view and they do 100% hedging. That's why you have to match with the risk appetite, right? But leaving it fully unguarded is also risky because then any volatility can come and hit you very, very severely. SKU rationalization, we also discussed in the earlier case study, reduces production complexity, cuts wastage, optimizes batch sizes, directly improving per unit economics. So it gives you this, benefit of scale and profitability. However, aggressive pruning risks losing market segments. So, for example, if you reduce, like I said, you must have certain amount of SKUs to be able to keep your customers happy. You cannot keep your customers happy with only one variety. So you have to have variety. So you have to balance again. You have to balance this whole thing. That is the whole purpose of this. Some of these SKUs also give you high margin. So you cannot do away with them. So, but there are some benefits surely which will come. You can look at it. Let's also see what additionally happens. Long-term contracts can also lead to same quality of goods being procured, thereby avoiding any difference in quality. That's also a very good thing. Somebody has said cost plus model. Yes, very difficult in products like this. You cannot keep changing the price in the market every week. That's the challenge you will have. I cannot say now I'll send the bar, this set of bars are 12 rupees, next set of bars are 13. Again, now prices come down, so next set of bars are going to be 11. So that's the big challenge. So you have to do a planned change of pricing in the market. So you have to, in the back end, manage the costs to maintain your profits. So from a compliance and governance perspective, so GG Kenya also started exporting cereal bars to neighboring COMESA markets, right? During an internal audit, it was discovered that exports invoice for 2 large consignments were not submitted for VAT exemption processing within the statutory 21-day window. As a result, the business risks losing input VAT credits for the period and may be liable for penalties under the Kenya's VAT Act. The lapse occurred due to absence of formal export documentation checklist and the lack of systems alert for statutory deadlines. Given that exports constitute 30% of projected sales, compliance risk now poses a direct impact on cash flow and margins. With respect to the investment made by GG India, right, from India into GG Kenya, reflects that the prices had been fluctuating between currencies of the two countries over the past 20 years, and particularly in the last 5 years, there has been a steep climb. Each INR being near 50 Kenyan shillings have become 65 Kenyan shillings now. So in the context of this background data which you have, or information you have, what internal control mechanisms should GG Kenya implement to ensure governance over tax compliance in multi-country operations? What can Golden Grain Naturals, the Indian promoter company, to do to protect its receivables from GG Kenya by way of royalties, etc.? What is the FEMA compliance that Indian company, GG Naturals India, should have ensured for its investment into GG Kenya when they contributed capital to the company? So again, multidisciplinary questions which come from a compliance perspective also. So any quick thoughts? Periodical review of tax updates, tax compliance, ensuring CBC reporting, mechanisms that would trigger compliance deadlines and undergoing tax audit. Yes. Periodic reviews. Perfect. For the first one, TP study report, not directly related. Yes, but it's also important. What about the second question? What can Golden Grains Indian promoter company to do to protect its receivables from GG Kenya by way of royalties? Hedging techniques. Perfect. Right? What is the FEMA compliance that Golden Grains Naturals Private Limited should have ensured for its investment into GG Kenya when they contributed capital into Kenya? Realization of export proceeds. Okay, so let me take to the answers. So GG Kenya should implement a tax calendar with automated alerts. Somebody was mentioning there should be a monthly internal audit of GST or VAT filings or whatever it is. Cross-verification protocols between dispatch, invoicing, and tax teams. ERP integration for compliance tracking. Right? On the second question, hedging is a good this thing. Currency hedge. Again, how much of currency hedge to do, etc., will depend on the risk appetite and expectations and plans. At the time of investment, there should have been a valuation done to support the pricing at which the investment was made. It should have also ensured that the investment exposure does not exceed 400% of its net worth. These are the FEMA regulations, right? FEMA regulations, which are applicable. It is also pertinent to inquire into restrictions and requirements in Kenya for foreign investments to be effected. So this is something, again, we might miss. We don't handle daily, day in, day out, we don't handle what is happening in Kenya, right? So there could be foreign, for example, here, there is a foreign investment registration which would have been required with Ken Invest. And of course, there are no exchange control restrictions. But for repatriation of royalties, there is a DTA of 10% withholding tax, which will have to be done. So these are the things which needs to be looked at and appropriately advised. Coming to the rapid fire MCQs, GG Kenya's relevant data summarized from the case study is as under. We saw they are looking to do a second line, right? The initial line was capex was 1800, second line was 700. Equity, let's assume, is going to be contributed at 60%. Balance only is going to be debt. The ROI was 22%. Sales was 2376. We expect the sales to get another 1188. That is another 50% more because of second line. PBT, let's assume, was 10% on the sales. From both these, it will be the same. So what would be the combined ROI with the second line also in place at the above metrics? So let's see whether the ROI is going to be better or what for our decision making. Somebody has said, yeah. The answer is 24%. Sorry, it's C, 24%. B is a typo there. PBT on a combined basis will be 10% of 2376 and 1188, which is 356. Equity will be 60% of 1800 and 60% of 700. So overall 1500. It's a 24% return. So it will improve your ROI because the second line is going to give you better margins overall at a lower cost. It's going to, with the 1800 capex, you got a sales of 2300. With the additional capex of 700, you will get an additional sales of 1188, 50% more for less than 50% of the capital. That's how it's this thing. That's how scaling happens. Cost management from a material cost impact. Let's look at this. GG Kenya's unit costing reveals that raw materials and packing materials make up 60% of the total per cost unit. EBITDA is 20%. If cereal ball sells at 20 and material cost increases by 5%, what will be the new EBITDA? Answer is 17. Actually, the EBITDA will come down because material cost has increased. The margins are going to be lower. So EBITDA is coming down. That VAT filing timelines, we saw that there is a timeline we were discussing about, right? What is the statutory deadline which we discussed for filing export invoices in the case study for VAT exemption? Yes, it is B. Of course, you will only get Indian questions in actual exam, but practically these were faced. So I put it there, but no questions will come from foreign legal requirements. The point is, I wanted to tell you that in an IBS kind of scenario, you need to think beyond what we normally see into much, much more. All this was looked at when we had to do this project actually. GG Kenya projects that break-even will be achieved in year 3. If the annual fixed costs were 3.3 million and the average contribution margin is 5, how many units will be required to break even? Of course, I've put simple arithmetics here. Maybe, like I said, in the exam, you might have a little more manual calculation required. Yes, 6.6 is the answer. Conceptually, I have just put, that's all, right? So coming to the last question on this, return metrics, ROCE versus cost of capital. GG Kenya's projected ROCE is 24%, while cost of capital is estimated at 13%. Again, what does this indicate from a value creation perspective? Negative value creation, break-even capital efficiency, strong economic value addition, dilution, and shareholder return. Yeah, I think everybody is going to see here, right? Strong economic value, because significantly more. With that, we complete the two, Both these material will also be made available by the institute in their portal and all that, I think, wherever it will be put in. So now, if there are any other free questions we can take, it's 9 o'clock now. 9:15 or so, the BOS team also wanted to discuss some questions and queries you might have about the exams. So another 15 minutes, we have a freewheeling time for any questions around these. Except what will come in the exam. That part, let's wait. Anyone wants to ask also, you can unmute and ask or put a query in the question this thing. I will stop sharing so it becomes easier. I think, no, I have stopped sharing already, I think.
ये पीपीटी हटा दो यार यहाँ से, मैं वो देख.
Sorry, can you make it a little louder? Hello? Yeah, somebody has put. Kindly address this particular query. What is the query which is there? Let me just see. So anything to do with the exam model, the portal and all that, BOS will answer. So that is planned later. Right now.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Yes,
Sir,
good evening, sir.
Student, one by one, please.
Yes, the query which is
Yes, please. Madam, you are cut off.
Mike,
You're having difficulty on the this thing, Mike. You can put it on a chat box. I will revert.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes, I'm Smriti Iyer this side.
Yes, please.
I am a CA final student preparing for Group 2 exams. Primarily, I've cleared Group 1 exams, and this is the first time that I'm appearing in the new syllabus. So, for IBS, I have been hearing from BOS faculties to make use of Saransh, which is made available on the BOS portal. So I would want to understand whether it is updated as per the applicable attempt. As I'm appearing in September 25 exam, so I would want to know whether it would be useful to carry the Saransh and the amendments are added onto it.
Students, sir, I am replying this query.
Please, please. Good.
Students, you can always carry Saransh book with you, but you have to read the same with study guidelines applicable for May 2025 examinations. In some case,
Acha.
Saransh may may be relevant for coming examination or so on.
Sorry, sir, but how to make out that the additions have been made in the Saransh? I mean, if I'm preparing for September 25, then how will I find out? Firstly, I need to get familiarized with the Saransh. Secondly, is there any chance to make out that how the additions are made in that? I mean, how to find out?
For this, there is only one way. You have to refer study guidelines and mark amendments, and then you have to do some work on Saransh.
Acha, self work is required. That means, okay, so
Yes, because recent updated Saransh are applicable for May 2025 examinations.
Acha. So study guidelines are separately available on the portal.
Yes,
May
yes. It is applicable for May 2025 examination.
Acha. So as I'm appearing for September, I mean the next consecutive attempt. So by what time shall I look through those study guidelines? I mean,
For this, you have to refer announcement section of our BOS knowledge portal.
acha. So as of now, there is no clarity, right?
Yes, you can email to us, then we will revert back to you on this when we will be able to share with you.
Acha, by when it will be out in the domain.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. There is
Okay.
process.
Okay, fine.
There is process. Accordingly, we are able to upload the same.
Acha, fine. Okay. Thank
Hmm.
you so much, sir.
Any other
Okay.
query?
Thank you for addressing. And Balasubramanian, sir, is he on board?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, sir, for having shared your insights, the real case scenario based. It was really interesting and insightful. And thank you so much, sir. Looking forward for your next session next week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Student, any other query from Bala, sir?
yes, I have two queries, one from the sir and one from you.
Yes.
Basically, I have cleared my CA final group 1 way back, almost almost many years back, like 5 to 6 years back, and now I am preparing for group 2. So,
Okay.
so what should be the strategy for group 2? Like, because as I come to know, like IBS is a very vast syllabus and it covers all the other subjects which are in the CA final. So what should be the exactly strategy? How should I prepare? And secondly, how Board of Studies can help me? What are the portals, domains, or study materials which they can provide me to help me in the preparation of exam?
Okay. First thing is here, you cannot master everything at once. Okay. But you have to study smartly. Okay. For this, you have to prioritize one to key subjects. Suppose if you are planning to appear in group 2 papers. In group 2, there are two papers, direct text, indirect text. If you are preparing for group 2, it means you are preparing for direct text and indirect text. In addition, you have to prepare one or two additional subjects. For example, financial reporting or corporate law. Okay, a strong grip on these subjects or related area will not only help in your studies, but also it will also help you in real life. When you will become chartered accountants, these are core subjects. It will be very useful. Okay.
Yeah.
Another important area is application of strategic models. I can say this will be bonus because this paper is multidisciplinary case study with strategic management. Therefore, strategic models may be asked in your examinations, maybe in May 25 examination, so on. Okay, for example, Porter's 5 forces, value chain, business model canvas, etc. Okay, two papers from group 2 and two papers from group 1 plus some bonus like you can add in your portfolio like corporate governance is very important area. Any case study can be connected with corporate governance. Okay, you should have basic understanding of each subject but expert knowledge should have at least in 4 subjects if you want to clear this exam. I am saying this based on pattern of previous examination. And regarding resources for this, regarding resources at BOS knowledge portals, we have uploaded various case study. You will find case study digest, additional case studies. Even we have given real life case studies in January and February 2025 edition of newsletter.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Well, there is supplementary question one. So if I want to resume my newsletter, I want to I want to purchase a newsletter and want to resume delivery of newsletter at my place. So how can I apply for that? Monthly newsletters.
There is some email ID on newsletter. You can email to that.
Can you put it in
Or
chat
you can email
just
bosnoida@ICAI.in. Then we will forward
okay.
the same to concerned department.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Or you can download the soft copy of the same from BOS Knowledge Portal.
Okay.
Hello, sir. I'm Smriti here. The query that I'd asked firstly, the mail that I have to send, can I get the email ID on which I can send the mail?
For which query?
The study guidelines query that I asked, the Saransh updation, to which email ID am I supposed to mail it?
bosnoida@ICAI.in.
Acha, that is the general one, right?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you, sir. Yes.
Welcome.
Continuing on the resources, Are these available in hard copies? Because soft copies, I understand it's available on the VOS portal.
Most of the resources are available in hard shape.
So how do we get them?
Sorry.
How do we order and get them?
You can order through CDS portal.
Yes, thank you.
Students, any query from Bala sir?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Hi, sir. My name is Anindita. I'm from Hyderabad. The answers that Bala sir showed in his presentation, the way of answering, would that be perfect for the IBS paper as well, or we have to elaborate more?
Very good question. This is very good question. Suppose I want to give you an example. Okay. Suppose there is a 12 marks question. Okay. If in an examination there is 12 marks question, okay, on assessing the competitive environment. Okay. The best framework to apply the here is Porter's five forces model. To assess competitive environment, here you have to apply Porter's five forces. It covers bargaining power of buyer, bargaining power of supplier, threat of new entrants, threat of substitute, and competitive rivalry. Okay. Now, how to structure your answer for full marks? Okay. For each force, write at least two strong relevant points. Use examples or link them with industry or scenario given in the case. Keep your analysis crisp and strategic. But marks distribution will be based on, suppose I have to reply 5 points. Then divide 12 into 5 points. 12 divided by 5 means approximately 2 to 3 marks per force. It means you have to give at least 2 or 3 points for each force. I am repeating again. Suppose if a question is having of 12 marks and you have to reply 5 forces, then divide 12 marks into 5 forces. Okay, it will be equal to 2.4. It means for each force you have to reply 2 or 3 points. Okay.
Okay, sir. So it means depending on the marks that are allotted to the question.
Yes. And it is very important to pay attention to common words. It is very important to read requirements carefully. If a question says assess, then you have to assess. If a question says evaluate, then you have to evaluate. If you are going to evaluate a particular financial decision or non-financial decision, then you have to give proper pros, cons, then you have to give proper conclusion. Then you will be able to get full marks.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Welcome.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, my query is, for example, in first scenario when Balasubramanian sir take that question's answer was based on physical assets impairment, but the most logical answer was intangible. So my question is whether are we supposed to write any fixed type of answers, or our perspective also matters?
I'll answer that. See, basically, it will depend on the case study which is given, right? So, what you will be answering will be based on a case study which is given in the paper. There, you will have to address the matters which are given there. The questions will be in relevance to that. For instance, in the particular case, why it did not come up, though in discussion I mentioned about it, it did not come up, is in the year 2000, it was not highly known to have intangibles sitting in books, especially if it is, self-generated intangibles. So that was the reason that was not there for them to see in that year. You understand? When Symphony was looking at it from their own perspective in 2000s, 2001, it did not come up because there were no intangibles which were sitting in their books. But when you look at the exam question, you will have to look at the case study which is given, and accordingly you will have to take it. Normally, you will have some financial figures also in such cases given, so you will be able to relate to it and put it. So the idea is what is there in the case study, and like he was mentioning, you put the framework and answer to every one of that in that. Yes, if you answer about both physical asset and intangible, it will be the right thing.
Okay. So looking at the question, it also had mentioned that using the index, assuming that index is also applicable in 2000s. So if we are focusing on index, then index also focus much more on intangibles as well as physical assets.
Yes.
So if we are applying index for that era, index also focuses on intangible. So I think logical answer will be writing about both. But how shall we know that writing both is correct and not waste our time about writing on that thing?
See, the idea is to look at understanding of the multidisciplinary requirements. So if the question comes about on standard and application, obviously the understanding of that has to be in relevance to that. It has to come. So like he said, if there are 5 forces, if you don't write about all 5, then you won't obviously get the full thing. The detailed questions will also carry marks accordingly. No? So accordingly, you will have to take it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Students, here there is one important tip, which is conceptual understanding. Conceptual understanding is the real game changer. Okay, this is not your typical exam where you can flip through an open book or search keywords to find answer. Now I am replying about open book exam. Okay, it test this exam tests you deeply your understanding of concepts, and more importantly, how well you can apply the same in given scenarios. If here, why module content, just search or copy paste won't work here. Why? You might waste time looking for the right concept. Even if you find it, you may misapply the concept because you are not aware about the same, and you will likely to run out of the time, affecting the quality of answer. What to do instead? Focus on conceptual understanding. This exam is not hunting of answer from the resources. If you have good understanding of resources, if you have good understanding of concepts, then all resources will be very useful in your exam. If you don't have good understanding of concept, then all resources are waste. Therefore, you should have at least basic understanding of concepts so that you can be able to find the concepts from the relevant module and apply the same. This is very important tip for this examination. Any other query, students?
Yeah, hi sir. My name is Vaneja. So I have one doubt, like what and all the advices or tips given to the students, those who are going to start their final preparation.
For this, first step is you should have good understanding of basic concepts of core papers. First, prepare your core papers along with set A and set B.
Okay, sir. Like people now are not concentrating more on SPOM because like there are multiple choice and no negative marks, so they can qualify easily. So they are taking very less time to do revisions and all when compared with the normal exams. So for SPOMB, most of the concepts are covered for this IBS. How we need to keep it in mind?
Let me clear you. Let me clear you. For example, corporate governance. Corporate governance question from Companies Act. Okay, SABI LODR may be connected with any case study of a company. Okay,
Yes, sir.
you cannot ignore the concept of corporate governance. Similarly, there are a lot of concepts you cannot ignore. Corporate law is very important subject. Okay, there
Yes,
are
sir.
so many questions can be connected with case study is which is based on body corporate. Okay, if
Yes,
a company is listed, then SABI LODR is very relevant.
yes, sir.
Even FEMA is also very relevant. In past examination, there was question from FEMA, but you will only be able to crack if you have
Knowledge.
good conceptual understanding of the concept. Otherwise, you can't answer.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, you're advising us to do rapid revisions for SPOM also, right, sir?
You should have at least basic understanding of concepts so that you can apply the same in examination.
Okay, sir. So, thank you, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, sir. I have one question.
Yes.
So earlier, one person had asked, like, when we are preparing only for second group, and how should we be focusing on
Yes.
preparation of this
Yes.
particular subject?
Yes.
So you mentioned like we have this case studies and all. No, like, will it be fine if we go through only the case studies, or should we be going through the like total syllabus of the particular subject? Like you mentioned, like financial reporting and corporate laws, right? So both the subjects also should be thoroughly prepared, or only case studies. If we go through will it be
You,
fine?
to prepare this subject, you should have conceptual understanding. You should have good conceptual understanding. If you have good conceptual understanding, you can crack any case study. But
Okay.
here you have to work strategically. You have to identify your strength, which area you are comfortable. You may be comfortable in auditing, you may be comfortable
Mhm.
in FR, or you may also be comfortable in AFM. You may therefore you have to identify the subjects in which you have to make proper control.
Okay. And one other doubt.
Yes. Hello. Hello.
That
Sir, for SCMP standard question, can I use suggested RTP and MTP? Again, I am saying you should have a basic understanding of concept only. Then you can solve any question or case study. Now, students, it's time to vote of thanks. As we conclude today's insightful session, I would like to express our deep appreciation to our esteemed speaker, CATV Bala Subramanian sir. Sir, your expertise and thought pro- insights have provided students with valuable perspective on navigating and thriving in the case studies. Your experience and knowledge have undoubtedly inspired and empowered all of students to think beyond borders in their student aspirations. To our students, thank you for your active engagement and for taking the time to join us today. Your questions and discussions have enriched the conversation, turning the session into a collaborative learning experience. We hope the insight gained today will serve as catalyst for your future goals in exploring case studies. Finally, let us remember that the knowledge we have gained today are the first steps towards expanding our origins. We look forward to seeing you in our next session, which is on 18th April. So stay tuned and be in touch. Thank you once again and wishing all the very best in your study. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
So,
Looking forward to the next session.
Thank you.
thank you,
And good night.
sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much, sir.